This is
Make it plain.
Make it plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make it plain.
Get woke.
Ladies and gentlemen, we often discuss reparations here on the show, but we know that there's an argument for national reparations. There are also arguments for local reparations, and reparations mean more than just the period of enslavement, but also have to do with all of the vestiges of enslavement, all the things that happened subsequent to enslavement, that enslavement caused and that sprang from enslavement. Some people don't want to talk about that, but everything that we've experienced since then is a vestige for which there ought to be reparations. And obviously, one of the most renowned incidents or vestiges occurred to Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And joining us today is our dear brother who is representing the few remaining survivors of the 1921 Tulsa race riot. They filed suit, and just a couple of weeks ago got some pretty good news in terms of where the suit is in the process. So we're happy to hear about that now from our dear brother, attorney Demario Solomon Simmons. Brother Demario, welcome to Make It Plain. How are you?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. Great to be here with you, Mark, and everything that you do for our community. So I'm excited to be here to talk about the latest update in our 100+ year battle to get justice for Greenwood.
Yeah. Well, let's start there and go through the chronology, because when we talk about 100 years, how long has it been since the suit itself has been filed? How long has that been in the process?
So our particular lawsuit, the current lawsuit, was actually filed in September of 2020. But the reason why I say 100+ years of this fight, because you have to go back to the massacre, which was in May 31st, June 1st, 1921. And I always like to start here, Mark, that even at the time of the massacre, our people were fighting back, okay? We were eventually overcome when we had a mob of tens of thousands of whites and the National Guard and the machine guns and the planes dropping bombs. But we literally were fighting from once they invaded our community, we fought back. And those Black men who put everything on the line to protect their businesses, protect their property, and most importantly, protect the women and children, I'm proud to be from them. I'm proud to stand on their shoulders. After the massacre ended, lawsuits started to be filed literally days after the massacre. Can you imagine you are filing a lawsuit in the exact legal system of the people that just burnt down your community, just burned out your neighbors, just killed your family members, but they did it. People like attorney B.C. Franklin was filing lawsuits while working out of a tent. Those lawsuits didn't go anywhere. For 20 years, they languished in the Tulsa County court system. And then they were summarily dismissed around about 15 years, about 1937. Then people kept fighting, even though there was a conspiracy of silence. For 75 years, the city of Tulsa and other perpetrators denied that the massacre even happened. But once they couldn't deny it any longer, towards the end of the 90s, they had to come face to face with their history, which is another reason why they want to talk about CRT and take out our history. They don't want to just not take out our history. They don't want to talk about their own history. But back to Greenwood. In the early 2000s, a report was produced by the state of Oklahoma, some courageous Black legislators, Representative Don Ross, state representative, and State Senator Maxine Horner. In this 200-page document highlighting and outlining the massacre, it talked about who was culpable, which included the city of Tulsa, the Chamber of Commerce, the Sheriff's Department, state of Oklahoma itself, right? And they called for reparations in the form of cash payments to the survivors, the descendants, scholarships, and also rebuilding the area. The state and the city said, hey, we're not going to do that. So Johnny Cochran, Professor Charles Ogletree, Audra Artur, which I know you know, individuals, these great lawyers came in and they, on the reparations coordinating committee, they came in and filed a lawsuit. And I, at that time, was serving as the National Black Law Student Association's reparations director, national reparations director. Got connected with these lawyers, sitting at the feet of these giants. And that case was filed, a federal case, civil rights case, in 2003. That case was dismissed based upon statute of limitations, complete racism. Went to the 10th Circuit in 2004. The case was dismissed again, or affirmed is a proper legal term. The dismissal was affirmed. At that time, I had graduated law school, was a baby lawyer, and was just happy to get coffee and make copies and whatever I could do to be a part of this fight. And during that capacity, that 2 or 3 year period, in 2005, we went to the Supreme Court, protesting outside of the Supreme Court, asking them to take up our case, and they denied us, quote, without comment. Devastating loss. At that time, Mark, we had over 150 living survivors. And they started just dying each year. These are people I spent, many of these people I knew my whole life, Mark. And I didn't even realize that they had been involved in the massacre. So that's how much it was not talked about. I went to school on Greenwood Avenue, Carver Middle School. Went to Booker T. Washington High School on the north side, Greenwood. Never heard about the massacre, never heard about Greenwood until I went to college in 1997. So 2007, the great late Representative John Conyers introduced legislation to try to to remove the statute of limitations argument. That was introduced in 2007, 2008, 2009. It got introduced every year to about 2013. It never actually even got passed. We had a hearing one time in 2007. Beyond that, we never got a vote on, never got out of committee. Mark, about this time, we're down to 25, 30 survivors. And then they're dying and dying and dying. We get to 2019. We have the most prominent survivor that was still left was Dr. Olivia Hooker, who was actually in New York. She passed away. Then we had a couple others pass away, and we were dejected, Mark, because all these survivors are starting to die. And it was at that time in 2019 that we said, there's no way we cannot try this again. We got to figure out some legal theory. And that's part of the problem, Mark, as you know, is there is a wrong that's so clear, but we have to jump through these hoops of this system that's not set up for us. And we have to do all these mental gymnastics and try to figure out and be smart and come up with this different stuff when we should be able to just stand up and say, you know, this was a wrong, you know, you need to right it, but it doesn't work that way for Black people. So we accept that challenge. That's part of what my grandma would say, the Black tax. And with this challenge in mind, we decided to try again. And I saw my friend, Eric Miller, you remember this, Mark, in 2019, around Juneteenth, they had a panel. They had a hearing on HR 40.
Right.
And Eric Miller, Professor Eric Miller, was at Loyola Marymount. He was a part of the litigation that I just told you about, the federal litigation in the early 2000s. He was one of 20 people to testify. And he was the only person that mentioned Tulsa, that said, hey, you cannot have a discussion about reparations if you don't have a discussion about Tulsa.
Tulsa, yeah.
I saw Eric. I hadn't talked to him about 5-6 years. Saw that clip, reached out to him on Twitter, said, man, we got to try something again. We put our heads together. We kind of pulled together the team again. Many of the older lawyers were not available anymore. Obviously, Johnny Cochran had passed. Those who don't know, Professor Charles Ogletree has Alzheimer's, which is devastating. I love him dearly. Think about him often. He did so much for me personally and for our community. But we pulled together a group of lawyers and we started researching, and everything we were going down this dead end because everything was going to hit us with statute of limitations. But here in Oklahoma, man, we have this public nuisance law. And this public nuisance law, which was being utilized at the time by the state of Oklahoma to bring lawsuit against opioid manufacturers. And this public nuisance law is so powerful. It's been on the books since 1910. And for over 100 years, it's been utilized thousands of times in the state of Oklahoma. And it simply says that if you do an unlawful action or you injure property or make it uninhabitable, that you're liable to fix that as long as the nuisance continues. You have to, what the legal term is, to abate it. So in other words, think about it this way, Mark, and the listeners. Imagine an oil tanker is out in the river and it's spilling oil. thousands of gallons an hour. That's clearly a nuisance, right? You see the oil spilling. But then the authorities, they plug the hole in the tanker. So it's no longer spilling oil.
Mm-hmm.
But that oil has now floated down river and it has coated the beaches and it's killing the wildlife. It's polluting the air, it's polluting the water. If it does not matter that the spill has stopped, if that oil is still on the ground causing problems 10 years, 50 years, 100 years later, it's still a nuisance. And until that nuisance is abated, you still have a claim that is outside of statute of limitations. That is what happened in Tulsa. The 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre is when a mob of tens of thousands of whites who were deputized and armed by the city of Tulsa, the county of Tulsa, the state of Oklahoma, the Chamber of Commerce, came into the Black community of Greenwood, the most prosperous Black community in the history of this nation. 40 square blocks, over 1,500 homes, over 200 businesses, 10 to 15,000 residents, but at any time, 20 to 25,000 people would be in Greenwood. It was the city to all these Black towns in Oklahoma, kind of like Manhattan is to you New Yorkers. They burnt down property, they killed people, they committed numerous crimes, and they never done anything to rebuild. In fact, they continued to exacerbate or exaggerate or make worse the nuisance that they created. Therefore, our statute of limitations does not apply until they fix the problem or abate it. That's our case in a nutshell. And so we filed our case in September 2020. The case, the defendants filed what's called a motion to dismiss. They said we had no right to be in court. Kick us out of court.
And the defendants now, we're talking about the city.
We're talking about the city of Tulsa.
Right.
Tulsa County, Tulsa Chamber of Commerce, Tulsa County Sheriff's Office, the Oklahoma National Guard, and two other entities called Tulsa Development Authority and Tulsa Metropolitan Planning Area Commission. Those are our 7 defendants. They all stood up and said, yeah, the massacre was a bad deal. Yeah, it was terrible, but that was a long time ago. And what can we do about it now? But Mark and listeners, God and the ancestors were on our side on May 2nd. Because on May 2nd, we had a hearing in front of our judge, Judge Caroline Wall in Tulsa County, district judge. We only have 3 living survivors, known living survivors left. And that's 108-year-old Mother Viola Fletcher, 107-year-old Leslie Benefield Randall, and 101 plus Hughes Van Ellis, who we call Uncle Red. They were there in that courtroom, along with my amazing legal team, which includes lawyers from all around the country, including my one law firm based in New York, Schulte, Walton, Zabel, who've been tremendously great co-counsel, my Justice for Greenwood Foundation team, and our entire community. Mark, I've been practicing law, it'll be 18 years in October. I had never seen anything like what happened on Monday, May 2nd, 2022. The courtroom had hundreds of people in there. It was literally people standing alongside the rows, and it was people standing outside the courtroom. It was like a scene out of a movie. If you ever seen the movie, I'm sure you have, A Time to Kill with Samuel L. Jackson. Right. And you remember how that courtroom was just packed. Yeah. It was a scene like that. I've never seen that in all my years of practice. And you have my team and our survivors and the communities out there. And we had, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee came down, and my good friend, the great civil rights attorney Barbara Arwine and Daryl Jones came down, and so many others came down from out of town. And on the other side, you have the defendants, all white attorneys, 6 men and 1 white woman, and it's just it's like a movie scene. And we had this argument in front of our judge and explaining to her that all we're asking for at this time, Mark, is the ability to move our case forward. Like, she was not going to rule on March 2nd if we win, if we get remedies, if we get abatement. And abatement is the legal term. It just means to repair. It just means to fix. So it's the same as reparations. Because as you know, Mark and listeners, reparations is just to repair. It's just to make good the harms that were done. But on May 2nd, we were not even at that stage. We were simply saying, for the first time in history, give us an opportunity to have a case to move forward so we can prove our nuisance, and then we can prove what remedies we need. And I am so elated, as you probably can hear and you can see, I'm still on cloud nine. You asked me before we started how am I feeling. I'm still feeling amazing. I'm still feeling fantastic, because on May 2nd, 2022, our judge from the bench, which is unusual, said that a part of our case is going to move forward. She said that she was granting in part the defendant's motion to dismiss, but denying in part. That means that some portion of our case is moving forward. Now, even though we still, as I'm talking to you right now, May 12, 2022, we don't know what portion of our case is moving forward because we haven't received the written order yet. We hope to have it by tomorrow. But we celebrated a victory that has never happened before. That a case related to the Tulsa Race Massacre brought by Black people who were victimized was able to move forward in some form or fashion. Now, obviously, we cannot wait to see exactly what that's going to mean for us. But regardless of what, we're still alive. And I know I've talked so far. I haven't given you opportunity to answer these questions, but let me say this, and I'm gonna be quiet because I know you got questions, and we get into this conversation. When I looked around that courtroom and I saw those 3 survivors in their wheelchairs, and the 2 older women, they're all very sharp, but the 2 older women, 108-year-old and 107-year-old, they don't hear as well if you're not talking directly to them, okay? But Uncle Red, 101-plus-year-old, World War II combat veteran, unbelievable, just unbelievable person. He heard everything. And I looked around and I saw him bawling like a baby with joy. And I just lost it. I just started jumping for joy. I didn't even realize that the courtroom explodes into a Justice for Greenwood chant. You know, in Oklahoma, they don't allow you to have cameras in the courtroom. If you saw what we experienced, if you saw it on a movie, you would say, that didn't really happen. But it really happened because our community understood this is not just a win for Black people in Tulsa. This is not just a win for Black people in Oklahoma. This is a win for Black people in America, because Greenwood's victory, the creation of Greenwood, was a win for Black people in America. The destruction of Greenwood was a blow, a massive blow to Black people in America. But if we're able to win this case and get reparations, abatement for Greenwood, where we have living survivors, we have documentation, we have video, pictures, everybody agrees what happened, that gives us the momentum and a template that's necessary to get reparations throughout this nation. If we lose Greenwood, where we have living survivors, we have video of the incident, we have hundreds of pictures, we have agreement of what happened, it sets us back. So this is why this is so important to us as a people, not just as people here in Greenwood, not just Black people here in Oklahoma, but as a nation. And what I'm proud of, Mark, is people like you have understood this power of this particular project, understood the necessity of Greenwood to be successful. And we have put together a coalition of people throughout this nation that's pushing this forward. And that's the beauty of the work. And I'm just so blessed to be a part of it and to be standing strong for our survivors and for our community here in Tulsa, in Oklahoma, and for Black people in general. So, you know, I'm just excited to talk about it. As you can see, I could talk a whole other hour, but I'm gonna be quiet and let you do some talking.
No,
it is your podcast.
No, it's ours, brother, and we're thankful to all have you engaged in this struggle as our revolutionary attorney. So you answered. I mean, it's always good when you can have a guest that anticipates all your questions. You answer a lot of them, and I wanted people to hear some of that history. But now you mentioned that a portion of the case will go forward. So the judge ruled right there on the spot from the bench.
Right.
And I know that caused a lot of elation.
Yes.
do you have any thoughts about what portion that might be, and what portions are there? What portions are there to be considered?
Great question. Great question. So we had actually two claims. The public nuisance claim, which is the most powerful claim and what's kind of the headliner, because that covers the public nuisance. Great question, Mark. The public nuisance is not a claim that's individual to the individual plaintiffs. What I mean by that is they're not saying, hey, Mother Fletcher, if we win this, Mother Fletcher, you're going to get a certain amount of money. It's much bigger and broader than that. That's why I love it so much. It's saying that the community of Greenwood, the 40 blocks was destroyed, and this is a claim for the community. And as part of the remedies that we asked for, and that we believe should be a part of that, one of the remedies is a victims' compensation fund, right? That's just one of the many remedies that we asked for. We asked for a land trust. We asked for abatement of taxes. You know, our argument is if the city of Tulsa and the county and the state destroyed the black people, but we paid taxes to the very entities that destroyed us for 100 years, then those taxes should be abated for the next 100 years. So we had very community-wide remedies that we're asking for. But we also had a claim for what's called unjust enrichment. Unjust enrichment is a claim that says, hey, you have utilized our stories, our death and destruction to raise $30+ million for a history center that was put there by white folks, for white folks, for tourism dollars. And this was not something that we just made up out of thin air. This was their own terminology, that they were building this as to create heritage tourism. And they were building this because they said their hashtag was hashtag Tulsa Triumphs, hashtag Greenwood Rising. So the history center that they built is called Greenwood Rising. And they said Tulsa Triumph. And we found that to be incredibly insulting, because number one, Tulsa was not destroyed. Greenwood was destroyed. So why are you talking about Tulsa Triumph? Are you promoting that Tulsa triumphed over Greenwood? Or are you putting, as they did in there, they bought a full page ad, Mark, in February of 2021 in a USA Today, stating that Tulsa has triumphed. Come to Tulsa for tourism, for heritage tourism. And so we say no. We say no, you don't use the blood money, the blood stories. I'm getting fired up now.
Go ahead, bro. You fine.
I'm getting fired up now because can you imagine someone raping a woman and then writing a book about the rape? And then they make the money off the book talking about the rape that they committed? That is exactly what happened here.
Well, if somebody can rape women and become president, this is America. So see, don't get me started. Yeah. Now I hear you though. Only in America.
Well, only in America where since we're going there, only in America where we send $40 billion overseas to a country that we're not bombing, but we bombed our own cities like Tulsa and Rosewood and Elaine, Arkansas, and $0 has been spent from anybody. That's going on right now in America. Right now in America. I wrote an article about this published March 11th in the USA Today 2022 about Ukraine. Look, war is bad. Bombs been dropped on men, women, and children is horrible. Nobody wants to see that. But you can't tell me that you can find the dollars. And I'm talking about, many of our friends in Congress voting to send that money overseas, but have never voted to give any money to my community here in Tulsa for the Tulsa Race Massacre, where we were bombed from the sky by America. And I have a problem with that, Mark. I have a problem with that. But let me get back to your question. So the two issues. So she could decide, we don't think this is going to happen, but I haven't read the order. She could decide, hey, the unjust enrichment can go forward, but not the public nuisance. That would be devastating, to be honest with you. I don't think that's going to happen, but it'd be devastating. Or she could decide the public nuisance is going forward and not the unjust enrichment. Or we had 9 named plaintiffs on the case. But again, that's not that important because they were named plaintiffs to be representative of the community.
Right.
And we had to hit some, I don't want to get too legally technical, but we had to hit some baseline legal requirements for standing and things of that nature. So we had to have certain people on there. But some of our people that are listed on there, they don't actually live in the community today. Their families were driven out. For instance, A.J. Smitherman, who was a very prominent attorney. He owned what was called the Tulsa Star newspaper. It was the first African-American newspaper in the nation to have a nationwide circulation out of Tulsa. He was also the longtime president of the what was called the Western Negro Press Association, which is basically like an AP service.
Right.
Very prominent man. He was a leader of Greenwood, crusader against lynching, not scared of white folks, writing front page articles on a daily basis. He was run out of Tulsa. They tried to lynch him. He was run out during the massacre. They destroyed all his property. And then they falsely and bogusly indicted him along with 100 other leaders for felony, so they could never come back. So we believe that his family would be here in Tulsa right today if not for what happened. So we placed one of his relatives, descendants, one of his grandchildren as a plaintiff. The judge may decide, we don't know, that, hey, he doesn't have standing today to be a part of this lawsuit because he doesn't live in the city, in the area that's impacted by the nuisance. So those are the type of things that she could do. We don't want to lose anybody from the case, obviously. We want to move forward with everybody intact completely. But as long as we have one person, we can move forward and get the relief that we seek.
And how can none of those individuals have standing? That would be absurd. Let me ask this, though. You mentioned the community claim. So are there no individual claims from any?
There is no individual claims.
Yeah, I got you.
In this lawsuit. And so that's another way that we were able to get around the statute of limitations. I really appreciate this conversation and really having the time to unpack this with you because, and I know your audience in particular will appreciate this too, because you guys, you make it plain. You dived in. That's what you do. That's what you've been doing for many, many years. When I talked about off the top, again, having to go through the mental gymnastics and find all the loopholes and try to be creative to figure out how we can move a case forward. If you try to bring a case for individuals, damages, money damages, you automatically hit with statute of limitations. You dead in the water. But this is an equitable claim. Equitable claim. I mean, we're not asking primarily for money damages. Now, as part of abating the nuisance, we will argue again, that it requires money. And that's why I was saying some of the things we asked for, scholarship fund, victims compensation, those type of things as part of our abatement plan will cost money. But we have to prove that up. And just so people be clear again, I think sometimes, Mark, and you know this so well, sometimes people don't realize that while we as Black people, most of us spend a lot of our time in our communities around Black people, we're still a very small portion of this population, 13, 14, 15% or whatever. And so particularly when you're in a place like Oklahoma, where we're only 7% of the state population, we don't have the ability to say, this is what we want, you better do it for us, right? Politically, we don't have that ability. Even though we say that, even though we fight hard, we still have to work within the confines that we find ourselves. So that's why we have to go in this court system and use the same laws built by the people that destroyed us to try to use it against them. I think we've done a magnificent job of doing that. I'm proud of the work. It's going to be a model for people, other communities around the country. We're already getting the phone calls because other communities have public nuisance laws, and they can utilize this model.
Yeah. No, that's very important. And it again, you have been mentored by some of the best, who were mentored by some of the best, and that's been the jurisprudence struggle in America, finding that legal theory, using, and they shouldn't be loopholes. These are law. There's a public nuisance law.
That's right.
That shouldn't even be a trip.
That's right.
Case closed. This ain't a stretch.
Yeah.
Y'all's law.
Yeah.
And that's what it says. So what are we even talking about? This should be open and shut in terms of this. And so now, if the case goes forward, are we talking about a bench trial or a jury trial?
So again, it depends on what the order says.
Gotcha.
For the public nuisance, it would be a bench trial only. There is a possibility on unjust enrichment that could possibly involve a jury trial. And so we really just got to review that order and then make determinations from there. But here's the thing, Mark. Oh, go ahead.
What I'm doing is now, in terms, obviously, you've looked at other public nuisance cases, and have you found those in the county to be upheld? I mean, is there a history of those being upheld?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the beauty, and you said it, Mark. I use the term loophole, but you're absolutely right. This is the law that's been on the books since 1910. Right. This law has been affirmed in Oklahoma for over 100 years. I mean, the oldest case we have goes back to 1911 from a law that was put on the books in 1910. It's 2022. This law has been used thousands of times in the state of Oklahoma. And as we pointed out to the judge on May 2nd, the law has been used for things such as, the Oklahoma Supreme Court has litigated and found such things to be a nuisance as, I talked about oil spills. I'm talking about smoking indoors. I'm talking about, they have a case where a lady, or some person, I don't know if it's a lady, I assume it's a lady, but it could have been a man, had 40 cats in their home. And that was considered a nuisance. So it's a wide variety of fact patterns that can be seen as a nuisance. The thing that has me, well, so many things have me excited. The ability, Mark, for the first time in history to have the judicial process and subpoena power to get documents and information about the massacre that's been hidden for 100 years is so mind-blowing. The ability, because of the team that we've been blessed to build, then the resources, and anybody that's listening that would like to help us, go to justiceforgreenwood.org, sign up for our newsletter, make a donation, stand with us, stand with our survivors, justiceforgreenwood.org. We are going to be able to work with the very top scholars and experts in the world to bring this case. I'm talking about the very top historians, the very top economists, the very top urban planners, architects, psychologists, medical doctors, mortuary, actuaries. I'm so excited. Like, Mark, really, I was talking to one of the clients this morning. In fact, he's a lawyer there in New York, by the way. And I was telling him, I said, really, if this order comes down like the way I expect it to, I don't know how I'm gonna have time to do anything else, because let's just set aside the legalities things.
We don't need you to do nothing else, but go ahead.
Right.
We need you on this. We need you to run point on this. Some folks supposed to run point, be the point guard. You don't need to play. You don't need to play wing and center off and nothing. You need to. Yeah, but go ahead.
Right.
Clear your calendar if that happens.
Yeah. Because man, can you imagine? Oh my God, it just, oh man, I get so excited thinking about it. We know so little about the tragedies and the atrocities that happened to us overall. Like, we think we know a lot, but it's still so little. And in Tulsa, we know so little today because we never had real access to their documents, right? Their family histories. Look, Mark, they didn't just burn down everything in Greenwood. They looted everything out of Greenwood first, okay?
Yeah.
We had testimony from survivors who for decades after the massacre, they would go into some white home as a repair person or a plumber or domestic, and they would see their mother's curio. They would see their father's grand piano. They would see their grandmother's picture on the wall. I mean, it's just going to be so amazing. You know, we're working with we have some experts right now. One, you probably know Dr. Derek Hamilton. He's right there at the New School in New York. Guys like that. We work with a couple of professors at Harvard University, Professor Nathan Nunn, who's already done a lot of research showing that when Tulsa happened, when Greenwood happened, it blunted economic development and progress for all of Black America. And they had the actual methodology and scholarship behind it. You know, we're not just saying this anecdotally. Like, no, we have the scholarship behind it. We now have medical evidence, scientific facts, right? That trauma travels through DNA and it travels through generations. All of that we will be able to bring out in a judicial form and have a trial on all of that information. It's truly amazing and overwhelming to think about that we will get that chance to do that.
Well, you know, what you're saying, you understand what you just said. I hope you understand. If I am the city or the county or the state and I'm hearing that, we don't want that. We settle. You know, you don't, does the city understand what it would mean to have all of that come out in trial and all out in the open? That utterly undermines what you described earlier. Their attempt to pimp 1921 to some tourism, for some tourism dollars. You can't have that. If I'm the city, if I'm the county, if now, you know, if that were to happen, that would just make the case even stronger. And like you said, set a precedent for so many other cases, for so many other situations around the country. You said something else earlier when you were talking about the bombing, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. The bombing in Tulsa, the bombing in Ukraine. You said, you know, they bombed us. Talk to us a little bit about who they were, because they had planes and everything. I've always been curious, where did the planes come? Were these the city planes? Were these private planes? Were these government planes? What do we know about that?
So what we know about that is that these planes were private planes that were commandeered by the city. And we do know that one of the companies whose planes were used was the Sinclair Oil Company, which is still in existence today. It's been through a series of mergers and different things, but the entity itself is still alive through successor entities. They denied that happened, even for, you know, they denied anything happened. They denied the massacre. Of course, as you know, they first tried to call it a riot. Right. And that was very strategic. You know, our audience needs to know that it was strategic for them to call these pogroms, these massacres, as riots, because this allowed insurance companies to avoid paying because of the riot clauses. And that's what they had tried to do in Tulsa. And we fought really hard to change that language. You know, as you engage in all these fights like we have to do, Mark, you have a lot of losses. You have a lot of obstacles, and you don't get to have a whole bunch of wins. But when we start, and even in this case, you know, we've had a lot of losses, but that's a huge win that we got. We have this whole thing changed from being called a riot to a massacre. That didn't happen just because. That happened because a select few people who really made it a point to say, no. This is a massacre, and this is why. And so, but then after they had to accept that, yes, this actually happened, then they try to say, well, we don't know if there any planes were used, but now they had to admit to that. And on June 1st of last year, 2021, President Joe Biden came to Tulsa, as many people know, and he gave a speech. And it was the first time that a president had acknowledged what happened here. And he actually acknowledged too, again, yes, this was a massacre, and there were the use of planes. And so no one can deny it now. The president of the United States has stated it. It was use of planes here. And we always believe the black people. You know, they say in the Me Too movement, we believe women. Well, we believe black people. And that's why at our Justice for Greenwood Foundation, you know, our litigation and advocacy aspects are very, very front and center. But we also have 3 other major programs. And one of them is our We Are Greenwood program, which is about oral history and genealogy, because we believe black people. We understand the griot tradition in our community. We understand how important it is that the oral history traveled down, and we've collected that from our survivors and our descendants. It's also important to us to document properly the genealogy of those descendants, because we have tens of thousands of descendants throughout the world. I mean, and we are in contact. We have descendants in France, and we have a lot in New York. We have a huge descendant community in Los Angeles, Kansas City, Chicago, Dallas. And our goal at Justice for Greenwood is to chronicle each and every one of those descendants. And when we use the term descendant, I think we believe we're doing something else revolutionary, because there are 2 forms of descendants. There are direct lineal descendants, and then there are collateral descendants. Because we understand that in our communities, hell, I don't know how many aunties and uncles and cousins I have that are not blood, but they my family. And so we have to have a framework, a workable framework that incorporates that and understands that, but at the same time keeps some level of accountability, credibility, and accuracy in the documentation. So we're working on all of that. At the same time, we're working on this litigation. It's truly exciting. We have a full-time oral historian. We have 2 magnificent, powerful Black genealogists, Black women who specialize in the genealogy of Black people in Oklahoma. One is Angela Raji. She's out there in Baltimore, and then Gail Jackson is over in Kansas City. So we have a small team, but we have a mighty team. And so I just ask, again, those who want to support our work at Justice for Greenwood, log on, give us a donation, sign up, work with us, because we're doing some revolutionary work that will be we're doing work that will be a model for communities around this country.
No question you are. And folks, we do invite you to go to justiceforgreenwood.org. Before we go, one other question, the other $1 million question. Can you confirm that the Gap Band song, You Dropped a Bomb on Me, is reminiscent or kind of a cameo raising Tulsa in 1921?
I can 100% and with great enthusiasm confirm that. Gap Band, the name Gap Band stands for Greenwood, Archer, and Pine, which are 3 cross streets, main streets in Greenwood. My mother, class of 1973, Booker T. Washington High School, the greatest high school in the history of this country, is also the high school of the Gap Band. They actually performed at her prom, so we grew up with them. Of course, they're much older than I am. But she grew up with them. I know them very, very well. And yes, I can confirm that. The Dude Dropped a Bomb on Me was talking about Tulsa, talking about the bombs that they dropped from the sky. And so everybody knows the Gap Band, and particularly now with Uncle Charlie Wilson. For many, many years, he talked about this last year. He wouldn't even come to Tulsa. He didn't want to perform in Tulsa for the reasons of that. So yes, I'm happy to confirm that. I mean, and I talk about Booker T. Washington High School because, and I say with all sincerity, it was the greatest high school in the history of this country, because it was a all black high school that was the heartbeat and the centerpiece of Greenwood. It was the first school south of the Mason-Dixon line to get what was called the North Central Association accreditation for high schools. I didn't say the first black school south of the Mason-Dixon line. I said the first school in 1920. It had a curriculum at the time of the massacre. It had a curriculum that right now you would think is AP courses, teaching trigonometry, calculus, Latin, Greek, advanced literature. In 1921, it has produced countless national leaders like Dr. John Hope Franklin, countless athletes. We just had a first-round athlete be drafted, Dax Hill out of the University of Michigan. It has had an unbelievable example or mark on this country, because that's what allowed, one of the reasons that allowed Greenwood to be born. We talk about the massacre. Another thing at Justice for Greenwood that's important to us, it's not just about the massacre though. We have to understand, how was Greenwood created? What was the environment that allowed Black people to create such a prosperous community in the midst of Jim Crow? And to understand that, you got to understand the education of Booker T. Washington. You got to understand the land ownership of all these Black people and how did they get so much land. Then you guys start talking about my people, the Black Creeks and the Black Cherokees, who came to Oklahoma across the Trail of Tears in the 1830s and had been living as free and independent people after the Civil War from 1866 to statehood. Oklahoma didn't become a state in 1907, so you had 50 years of Indian territory where Black people were living here, landowners, free and independent, and that allowed, we called ourselves Native Blacks, that allowed state Negroes, those who come out of the United States of America, looking to run away from Jim Crow, to come to Oklahoma, settle next to these Black settlements that had already been here, and that's how you get Greenwood. Land ownership, freedom mind state, and then you have the economic wealth and educational concentration and greatness. These are things that we got to bring back to our communities to rebuild Greenwoods. Land ownership, freedom mind state, economic wealth, education concentration. That's the formula. So we don't just talk about the destruction of Greenwood. That's what our case is about. But we talk about what created Greenwood, and then how did Greenwood rebuild somewhat itself after the massacre, and then it was redestroyed again as a continuation of the massacre during urban renewal, which we call Negro removal, where they specifically, intentionally, and purposely put the highway through the remaining remnants of the business community for the stated purpose. The stated purpose of destroying whatever was left of Greenwood, and number two, to push us further north and have a physical barrier segregating the Black community from the white community. Okay, that's our nuisance right there, because that highway still is there. It had locked in, it took, whoever was left took their land for nothing. So all of that is important in our history. The litigation is front and center now because we have 3 living survivors. We want to get them justice before they die. We do not want them to die like the other thousands, tens of thousands of survivors and victims who died without justice, but it's so much more. And that's why people should connect with us at Justice for Greenwood. And that's why I'm so thankful and appreciative of you using your awesome platform to allow us to have this conversation today.
No, this is mandatory. And folks, as we go, I want everybody to understand something. Our brother, who obviously is an excellent representative for our people and a representative in this case, what he is talking about is a collective mindset. You know, there's some now who are making this argument that everything must be lineage based and it must be proven. But what he is saying to us, even in this case, these aren't individual cases. This is not, because that does get into the statute of limitations. This is about the impact upon this has had upon the whole community for generations. The collateral damage it has done, aside from those who were individually and directly impacted, we all are impacted. Just this week, God bless her, the Interior Secretary said they're going to investigate what happened in the Native American schools in the 1800s. All right, and that's good. They should do that. But I want people to understand that when that type of thing happens, then it's because sometimes, unfortunately, DeMario, some of us even, and that's the part of the vestige, the self-minimalization. You know, we're on the spectrum a lot of times between self-minimalization and self-hatred. So sometimes we have to hear, like you use the word pogroms, and that's usually a word that's confined to the Jewish experience. But sometimes we need to hear how other people address their trauma, historical trauma and oppression, to make us feel like, wait a minute, we can do that too. So that's what it takes. That's fine. Deb Haaland, absolutely. I support you 1,000% in doing that. Now, Black folk, don't get scared and upset and say, well, Mark and Mario, they ain't gonna let us do that. Y'all crazy. We can't do it. This is long-term transgenerational trauma, transgenerational. You know, so we all feel it, we all know it, we all talk about it, and we can't continue to sweep that under the rug. And people are still enriched.
Right.
We just talking about Tulsa. And what Tulsa can do for every place else. Because this is everywhere. Tulsa wasn't the only place that was bombed. It wasn't the only city treated. It wasn't the only, and you get into redlining, as you mentioned, urban renewal, Negro removal. You get into all of that. All of these cities are affected, not to mention, I was about ready, when you were talking, I was about ready to look at my phone to see if there was a public nuisance law somewhere in the US code, because we can light them up with that, but the whole federal government. But this is the approach. It affects all of us. And so I applaud you, brother, for approaching this, coming up with the legal theory in the way you have. And folks, again, we invite you to, this won't be the last time we talk about this, it won't be the last time you hear about it, but this is the struggle. As I said, when Deb Haaland made her announcement, and I'm assuming people know, but there were Native American schools set up by the federal government in the 1800s where Native American children were abused,
right,
and terrorized and traumatized. She's secretary. That's what she's supposed to do. That's what, of course, that's what we expect her to do that. And thank God she's doing that. And nobody other than those who are just truly racist can bat an eye. They can say, well, you know, we don't really need to do that. We don't want to deal with that. There's still something about the Black experience, the enslavement experience, that everybody just gets tripped out. Why I think, DeMario, is because of their own fear, their own inability to face the reality that this country was built on our backs, almost exclusively. And everything that was done to us has yet to be reconciled and repaired. And I guess people get overwhelmed because if they really get into that, well, what's left? What'll be left? What are we owed? But we got to do it. We got to have the dialogue. We got to have these cases. We got to go to court. We have to continue to be in the streets. All of these things work together. We won the civil rights movement in the cities. It was the individuals. We won in Montgomery. We won everywhere. We won in Birmingham. We won everywhere. We won in Selma. We won everywhere. We win in Tulsa. We could possibly win everywhere.
Yeah.
So what DeMario is doing is employing that strategy. Same thing in Brown versus Board. There was all those city suits, those state suits came together.
That's right.
So this is the same thing. This is very historic, very important. I'm energized as well. My brother here is something else. I'm so proud of him and proud to know him. And he's been doing this for years. We've had an opportunity to know each other and work together. I'm thankful for him. I support him wholeheartedly. And folks, I want you all to do the same. justiceforgreenwood.org. And he mentioned this in passing, but the CRT, he just gave us some history, a history they don't want taught anymore. And they don't want people to know this history. They don't want any more Black history in the schools. Ain't about CRT. CRT was never taught in schools anyway. It was taught in law school.
Right.
It wasn't taught in the schools.
Right.
So they want this history not to be taught to our young people, and we got to do something about that too. So we've had some history today. So share this show with people, not just to promote me or the show, but to tell some history. He went through the whole history, the history of Tulsa and the lawsuits that happened. This was Black Wall Street. I'm going. You got me going now. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let's just time out for 1 minute. Y'all said we had to be segregated. And the law was, Plessy said, as we talk about the Supreme Court and the way they change things at a whim, that's what they're doing with Roe.
Right.
So let's go back now. Let's go to Plessy. It says separate but equal. Now you take that at its place. You got Wall Street. You got Black Wall Street. Sounds like folks was maybe trying to be equal in terms of our economy. And then they say, psych. No, we didn't really mean that. Y'all can't have a Black Wall Street that is financially successful. Wait a minute. I thought you said we had to be over here, but we could be equal. So we just got our stuff together. We got you mentioned, all those businesses, all those people, a Black Mecca for economy. I thought you said we could have that.
Right.
We didn't really mean that.
Right.
So folks, we got to really understand what this is really all about. They said, wait a minute, not only are they doing this, they doing it well, we have to stop it. We have to bomb it. We have to do away with it. So no. We need to understand what this is and what's going on. Our struggle is not over. We can't be comfortable. And that is why we support our brother, our very special guest today. We both been carrying on today, but we have to. Y'all just have to understand that. That's what we got to do. Our brother, attorney Mario Solomon Simmons, justiceforgreenwood.org. Brother, we are with you all the way. And we appreciate you and what you've done, the work you're doing. God bless those survivors. That's God right there, y'all.
That's right.
A whole lot of folk ain't living over 100. There's a reason these folk are still here, because there's still more for them to do. They need to be seen and heard. They still have a testimony to give. And some of us need to hear it, because we still, I don't know how it, we need to hear the testimony that we might live to be over 100 years old to tell the story of how we got over. So that in and of itself is a lesson right there. Attorney Demario Solomon Simmons, thank you, brother. We can go on and on and on. Lord have mercy. But God bless you, brother. Thank you for everything. Justice.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for having me on.
Justiceforgreenwood.org, y'all. Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. As always, perform an act of kindness on behalf of an elder or young person. Write a letter to a sister brother who just so happens to find her or himself incarcerated. Offer libations to the ancestors upon whose sturdy shoulders we all now stand. And above all, give thanks to the God of your understanding by whatever name you call her and him. All God asks of us is that we give each other love. Thanks for giving MIP love. And please remember to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.